And especially on a Wednesday when we have Reverend Frank Ritchie joining us in studio. Good morning, Rev.
Good morning.
Very, very interested in today's discussion because I put this to you last week. And I learned this because I wanted to talk around hell.
Yeah.
And you were okay when I said, Frankie, do you mind if we talk about this next week? We ran it past our boss. Bjorn was away. He was on leave. And so he's caught up with what we're going to talk about this morning. So I'll start and then you can just take it away, okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So if you believe in God, then you believe in the enemy because the enemy exists, right?
You believe in evil.
And evil.
Yeah.
And if you believe in God, you believe there is a heaven. A lot of people do believe there's a heaven. So conversely, then you must believe that there's someplace else called hell. Now, in my mind, in heaven, in a lot of people's minds, when they picture it, it's a paradise. You're walking through wheat with your hands. You know.
That was
Constantly in slow
That was
motion.
the Gladiator.
I know.
That wasn't
I know.
a Bible.
But you know,
It was Gladiator.
Good picture, though.
But you know, it's conjuring up really, really good imagery.
Yeah.
Vice versa, though, when you think of hell, I think, and I've seen imagery around it, of a fiery lake.
Yeah.
Right? And it's dark and it's not a good place. So, hell,
Yeah.
what is it?
What the hell, Frank?
I just want to say this is another one of those topics where you're on a hiding to nowhere as soon as you start talking about it, because some people are very invested in that imagery and very invested in ideas around this stuff. So there's almost nothing you can say that will keep people happy. So I just want to say, if this ends up online and there's a discussion, part of the beauty of our Christian faith is our diversity and our willingness to listen and be curious with each other and respect each other in our differences. So I'll just put that out there. I went on a really big journey with this very topic many years ago. And so I started a word study. And the word study led me to a place that was just fascinating and just made Scripture and the writers of Scripture so much richer. So in older English translations of the Bible, we'll see the word hell appear in a number of places. And the word hell is used to translate a bunch of different words and a bunch of different concepts and ideas. And the word hell was used because it was a familiar word in Old English and in Norse mythology, which is where it was coming from. And in Norse mythology, hell was the abode of the dead. So it was a relatable image. People kind of understood it. They knew what it was. And then that was used to translate in the Old Testament a word known as Sheol, which was the grave. It was where everybody would go. And there were different ideas in the Old Testament about what would go on in Sheol. But if you see the psalmist saying to God, no one will praise you from Sheol, so I don't. Like, give me your goodness now. I want to experience the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. You get to the New Testament, and in writings for Jewish people, where the audience was going to be Jewish, the word Gehenna is used. And Gehenna is a specific place outside of Jerusalem. You can visit it now. It's a wonderful garden area. But in Jesus' time, that area was associated with images of people sacrificing their babies to Moloch many, many years before Jesus. Was related to where Jewish bodies were dumped when the Persians and the Romans sacked the nation. So it was, and then in Jesus' time it was this dump that, you know, there were worms, there were fires always going on in it. So if you wanted a picture of judgment for a Jewish person at the time, talking about Gehenna as the place that you might end up was a horrid picture. You move on to Greek-speaking audiences, and the word Hades appears and gets translated as hell. And Hades, again, is the abode of the dead. It's the abode of everybody who passes away. And then you get Peter once uses the word Tartaros. In Greek mythology, Tartaros was where the conquered gods would go. So Zeus defeated Kronos and the Titans, and then they imprisoned them in Tartaros. And then you get the lake of burning fire in Revelation, which is kind of the last judgment. It's the last burning up of everything that has stood against God. What I see when I see talk of heaven and hell is imagery that's trying to paint a picture for the reader, using stuff that's familiar with them to give a sense of what it would be like to dwell with life and the source of life. Like, if God is the source of life, dwelling with God would be good. And so we get images of rivers flowing with milk and honey and streets paved with gold. Now, most of us would probably say we don't believe that to be literally true, but it's conjuring up this amazing picture of dwelling with God. So then what would it look like to be away from that source of life? We don't want that. But rather than giving us a literal picture, it's saying if you're not connected to the source of life, it's going to be horrid. Now, whether that's eternal conscious torment or not, we don't want to be disconnected from life. So the imagery that we're given right across Scripture, drawing on different mythology and different understandings, is life away from the source of life is not good, and we do not want that. Now, I want to say, hell is not the center, and whatever you believe about hell is not the center of our faith. The tomb and the empty tomb is the center of our faith. So I got asked the question once, and I know I'm warping on now, but I got asked the question once, Frank, how would you talk about God if there was no hell? Now, I'm not saying there is nothing like it, but how would you talk about God if there was no hell? I did not become a Christian because I was scared of hell. I became a Christian because I was compelled by the love of God. The idea of hell or any sort of torment is not what keeps me in my faith. What keeps me in my faith is the compelling love of God. That's where we need to major. And I think most of us need to go, and some of this other stuff, we don't completely understand it. I don't know, but I trust God.
Nice.
Speaking of like the language, you talked about, Peter, Jesus, David using these different words throughout the Bible to kind of describe like a place that people would be familiar with that's separated from God, or a place of horror and destruction. Would it be kind of, if they were speaking nowadays to an audience trying to describe something like that, it would be like saying, Auschwitz or Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Or, to give people a location, like a picture that they're like, yeah, rough, horrendous place you don't want to go and would never want to end up.
Yeah, that life, and it's not necessarily a question of eternal conscious torment either. It's just life apart from the source of life is not something that we want. We want to be connected to the source of life. So yes, I think in a materialist world where we don't have spiritual concepts of these things, yes, I think we would start to draw on some of the most horrible places that we can in order to conjure up that imagery. So yeah, I think
West Auckland.
I think Auschwitz, maybe find some fiery desert place in the world that we can go, look at this. But that doesn't mean that that's exactly what that looks like. It just means we do not want to be disconnected from the source of life.
Yep. I know we're probably going on a bit here and need to get to your second topic, but you mentioned, and we were talking earlier about is it in like the 1600s, Dante, the painting that like a lot of the ideas of a modern idea of where hell has come from, this kind of torment of fire and pain and suffering and everything.
There's this medieval poet called Dante who wrote this amazing poetry about a journey through essentially hell and the different circles of hell. And then there's paintings that were inspired by Dante's imagery. And a lot of what we hold popularly in our head as what hell is comes out of Dante's imagery. Now, Dante, a lot of people who have kind of pushed against that imagery of hell, I think do Dante a disservice by going his influence was terrible. Dante's poetry is amazing. It's worth reading Dante's poetry with commentary when he starts talking about hell, because he draws in, again, Greek mythology and all these other images, stuff from the Egyptian afterlife, as he works his way through what he calls the levels of hell. But ultimately it comes out the other side into this amazing image of God's grace. Dante's Inferno is a story about God's grace. But if you're going to read it with a commentary.
Thank you for unpacking that. We could dig so much deeper into this topic, and we can talk a lot more. But I like the way you frame that, Frank, and that, it's about, we're looking at staying connected with the blessings of God and putting that at the forefront, as opposed to whatever else that I was trying to dig at you for. So that was really, really interesting. If you want to find out more or get some commentary across to Frank, I'll give you his email address in just a second.
No, don't do that.
Up next, we're going to talk about how you support people who lose their jobs next here at Life. Very, very cool. Insightful chat with Reverend Frank Ritchie, who joins us this morning. Rev, I want to switch gears a little bit. Across the media landscape, we're hearing about a whole lot of job losses. There's still people at TVNZ who have yet to hear about where the situation is at in terms of having a job. And that's just the media landscape. But it made us think, okay, let's And it's not just people in media who have the door closed on them as far as a job is concerned. You know, there are lots of people, given the current climate that we're in, are faced with losing jobs. And as a friend of that person or somebody who's going through that, it's very hard to sort of support that person. I mean, so we're putting it to you, you know, supporting people who are losing their jobs at the moment.
Yeah, it's hard, eh? We're in one of those economic downturns at the moment, and this is cyclical. So the economy will bounce back, jobs will come back, and we'll all get out of, well, not all of us, because poverty is always real. But there will be another side to this dip that we're in. But when we're in these dips, it's hard, whether it be inflation biting and interest rates biting your weekly balance and your ability to do things like purchase the weekly groceries, or you lose a job. It's a hard time. And jobs are particularly hard to lose because we spend so much time in our jobs. And in the Western world in particular, there's a lot of identity wrapped up in our job and what it is that we do. We get a lot of mana from that. We find a lot of our sense of self-worth in our job. So when you lose your job, it hits all of that, the identity questions, the questions of worth. And then if you're struggling to put food on the table and you need more work and it's not coming, that's really, really hard.
And you've got heaps of time to think about all of these things because you're not working, right?
Yeah, and again, all of that. So as those who might be alongside some people who have lost their jobs, I would encourage you to see it as exactly that. Our job is to be alongside. Our job is not to solve the problem. For some of us, we might be able to. We might be able to give someone a job or give someone something that leads them towards a job, but most of our job is to be alongside and to be with, not to solve the problem. So I think if we know people who have lost their jobs, read the room, get a sense of where it is they're actually at. Don't just assume what it is that they might need or want. And if we're in their life with them, we get to respond to where it is that they're at, which is where I love the scriptures that talk about laugh with those who are laughing, weep with those who are weeping. And one of the things I most love doing once a month, there's a small group of guys that I go out and I have a beer with once a month at a place called the Londoner in Hamilton. It's like this rundown English style pub. It's just this great place to relax and chew the fat and chat, and we can talk about anything. Those sort of spaces are really good just to know that you've got people in it with you. So if you know someone who's lost their job, they're having a hard time, invite them out for a coffee or a beer or whatever it is that you do, and just listen to them. But this is also where I think church communities are so good. There are people in my church community at the moment who are struggling financially because they don't have work. And so we're able to help them meet their needs financially. Not as a church because we've got this big fund that we can just give, but we're able to say to other people, hey, look, we've got a need here. This person's struggling to meet their rent or whatever. Can we help them? And so you'll see people pitch in together. But that only happens too because someone's able to say that they have a need. So again, if you're on the side where you've lost your job and you're struggling and you're in a church, make sure you tell other people that you have a need as well.
Hard thing to do, and I know we've got to get to the news, Salah, but I remember during when COVID first hit and there was a lot of people in lockdowns and stuff losing their work and all that kind of stuff. I remember the church that I was in was like, can we put together a pool of money where we can do exactly this and help the people that are struggling? Heaps of people put money forward to say, yes, I'd love to support the people that are losing their livelihoods. Not one single person stepped forward to say, that's me, I need some help.
Yeah.
Not one. Even though the church knew that it was going on. So often it's like you have to almost go and find the people because we're very proud and people don't want to put their hand up.
I think that's the responsibility of us as a community, and you put it back on the church community as well. I mean, it's not totally our responsibility, but, you know, we need to look out for each other when that person can't pick themselves up themselves.
Yeah, and because we might hit a point, if we have the means at the moment, we might hit a point where we have the need, and then it gets to turn. The scripture talks about that we give, and when we're in need, it gets given back to us. That's part of being in a church community.
Thanks for your insight this morning, Frank. And I love the way, you know, we're not going to be able to solve all the problems of the world. You're probably not going to be able to solve all the problems that one of your friends or your family members are going through. But if you sit and listen, that goes a long way. Appreciate your time, Frank.
Thank you.